Thank you so much for joining us, Rob King. He's the CEO of Zedify. You're changing up things in the UK. I know that you call yourself on the website the greener last mile delivery. It's a densely populated place. Most of these cities, you can barely move, barely park. What is the situation like, and what is Zedify doing differently to make the cities greener?
Thanks, Mia. Yeah, I mean it's a bit of a nightmare, I think, on the streets of cities, and it's not just London. I think most of our cities, even quite small ones, have got major problems with congestion and air pollution and all sorts of other things. And more so for delivery drivers and anyone out there doing deliveries. So Zedify is very much all about trying to make those deliveries in cities better. And for us, that's got two sides, I guess. One is just making sure that, as a consumer, you get your deliveries in a way that you like, and they aren't just chucked over a fence or eaten by a dog or destroyed by the rain, and making sure that delivery experience is really good physically as well as on the digital side. But I guess our whole purpose and the reason why I set this business up and why all our team work for us really is the opportunity to create huge impact in our cities and what we can do there to reduce our carbon emissions, but also make our streets a lot nicer to live in, so quieter and safer, all that good stuff. And air pollution is a really, really big thing. That's killing thousands of people a year. So that's really what Zedify is all about. And we're here to try and disrupt the way that things are happening at the moment. And I mean, maybe it's worth me just talking a little bit about that, because if you're a DPD or an Every or a Yodel, you'll typically have a big logistics hub miles outside of your city, and early in the morning those parcels will arrive at the hub. You'll have vans turn up, they'll load up, they'll zoom down the motorway really, really quickly and efficiently, but as soon as they hit that city environment, they'll end up getting caught up in congestion and can't find parking, and nobody really wants them there because they're smelly and polluting. So they're basically using the same vehicle to zoom up and down the motorway and do that bit of it as the city environment, which is really very different. And Zedify's model is around decoupling those two. So we have what we call micro logistics hubs, micro consolidation hubs on the edge of the urban environments, and they act as like a gateway for deliveries coming into and out of the city. So you can have your vans and trucks doing all that great stuff up the motorway, and then stuff comes up into our consolidation hubs. We join deliveries up going to the same locations, and then we remode them. We put them onto these amazingly really cool electric cargo bikes and trikes that are pretty big. They're about half the size of a small van. But actually, over the course of the day, they can deliver more volume because we're really close to our consumers, so we can go back and forth and deliver, lots more over the course of the day, and that's much better for our consumers because they get a better service and obviously all those environmental benefits that I talked about before.
I mean, that's going to be my next question. Why e-bikes? I mean, does that not limit the amount of packages that you can transport in one trip?
Yeah, well, just as I said, why e-bikes? I guess that's the first question. When you compare that to a van, a diesel van, there's a massive, massive change in terms of the carbon impact. But also just from being able to get around that city, you've got a smaller vehicle that's more nimble, that can access more areas more quickly. That is a better delivery vehicle for our city centres, and particularly, the way that we want our city centres to be in terms of quiet and less impactful and all the rest of it. But even against an electric van, and that's typically what the industry is doing at the moment, is saying, hey, look, we've got all these diesel vans, let's just move them to electric vans. But
Yeah.
that isn't really helping that much. It's maybe saving about 20-30% on carbon emissions.
Okay.
Because if you look at the whole embodied carbon emissions, it costs an awful lot to build those big, heavy electric vans.
Mm.
So if you've got a really super lightweight electric cargo bike, all of our research suggests that's about a 90% saving on carbon savings,
Sure.
even against an electric van. So basically,
Wow.
if you can put it on a small vehicle and a lightweight cargo bike, then you really should,
Yeah.
just from a purely carbon impact point of view. And then there's all the other benefits that I talked about before about, although it's smaller, it has this really short stem mileage. We're really close to where those urban consolidation hubs are to our
Okay.
consumers, so we can go back and forth really easily. And we typically will do 2, 3, or even 4 routes in a day, compared to a big van that will just do one big route in a day. So I guess the other thing is that we're always full. Those cargo
Yeah.
bikes are always full.
I can imagine that. And what I also like about your website, Rob, is that there's a calculator where you can see actually how much you can save when using Zedify from a carbon emission point of view. I mean, that is something that's also very helpful. Then you can physically see why it is better to use Zedify. It's not only because you're in the industry, but you're actually convincing people and showing them, proving why they should use Zedify.
And that's really important. If you think about retailers and the brands that we're trying to convince to use our service, they're like, oh, yeah, but, DPD have got some electric vans. This is okay. We can do this. So we have to show them the data so that they can put it into their net zero calculators, because most companies now are taking this all actually pretty seriously and go, well, let's actually look at these numbers. Let's not just do this as a kind of small marketing piece. And the numbers do look really, really positive for using cargo bikes. So if we can deliver a service that's also better for them, then that's a really, really important thing that we can do.
I mean, it is Earth Day. Do you think that there's still a lot of convincing that need to be done in this industry before we get to those greener cities? Like you've said, it's just too easy to make the other decision. We literally need to convince people every single day why it is better to use e-bikes.
I think that's a really good question. And there's some interesting stats that came out not so long ago. So someone did some research on Gen Z, and they found that 80% of them would pay more for sustainability stuff. But for those companies that put a 50p surcharge on the end of the delivery thing, no one chose that 50p surcharge. So it shows that in their heads, they're saying, yeah, we'll pay for more sustainable stuff, but they don't actually do that in practice when it's like, hey, we're going to charge an extra 50p. And so you might conclude that, oh, well, we don't need to invest in sustainable stuff. But the other really interesting statistic is that out of the top 100 brands in the world, the ones that are doing best are the ones that have a really high sustainability index, which means that the ones that are investing in sustainability stuff are doing really, really well.
Sure.
And therefore, it is really, really important that brands do invest in sustainability because their customers will keep loyal to them if they do that. So some really interesting stats, I think, coming out of why this is really important, and the power, I guess, of consumers in shouting about this stuff and wanting to do more.
You do a lot of research in this industry. What would you say, what is our collective responsibility in the delivery sector? How are we contributing to what we see? Global warming. We see so many of these things happening, and we do know restaurants and all of those cups and everything that we do, packaging, we do contribute to this. What do you see? Where is this going if we don't do something urgently about it?
Yeah, well, I think as an industry as a whole, I think it's actually they're very, very they want to do good stuff. They want to change the world, and I go to lots of conferences where all this stuff is discussed about how they're going to get to net zero. But businesses are businesses at the end of the day, and I think for them it does come down to the numbers and the commercial side of it. So if they are losing accounts with retailers and brands, then they need to do something about that. So part of that is around building their sustainability stuff, and so therefore they are starting to invest in it. But I think it really comes down to consumers shouting and demanding that they want clean air, they want these wonderful sustainable deliveries, and that will then drive the businesses to go and do that. And I think there's probably an element of the local authorities and the councils doing stuff collectively and saying, okay, look, we've listened to consumers and they want clean air in our cities. We know how to do this. We have to stop these types of really heavily polluting vehicles going around. We need to put in infrastructure to make it really easy for people to walk and cycle, all that good stuff, because that creates a level playing field, I think, for businesses to go and invest in sustainable stuff.
Do you think that cities must move faster, implementing legislation to hold businesses accountable? Because if there's no accountability, there's no legislation, nobody's really pressured to do something about it.
I think that's right, and that's really what I was just trying to say. For this to really accelerate, there needs to be a level playing field across all businesses where they go, this is it. This is the kind of city that we want, and that's your starting point, is going, this city wants to be, no pollution, high levels of safety, everyone feels comfortable walking around, all that good stuff. If you start with that as your vision of what a wonderful, modern city looks like, and you put in all the measures to do that, and there's some cities doing this really, really well. In France, Paris is doing this really well. In Spain, Barcelona is doing this really well. The German cities are starting to do this really well, and we know all the Nordics have been doing it well for ages. So I think that's our starting point, isn't it? It's kind of like, what sort of city do we want? For local authorities to put in the measures to make that happen, and that creates a level playing field. And then you leave the ingenuity of businesses to come up with the solutions for that. And that's what businesses are really good at. Is like, I now know exactly what you want out of us, and we'll go and create great solutions for this, rather than sort of saying, well, it's the business community's, responsibility to do this. They are, as I said before, they think about numbers and commercial side of it, and that's the most important thing, because they've got to carry on in business. And if one of them sticks their head out and starts doing stuff, and it costs them tons more money, then they're potentially going to lose loads of customers. So I think it's all about, all those different stakeholders all working together.